All right, guys, we're coming up on about that 9:30 mark, so we are officially going to launch the episode. Welcome to the Healthy Humans podcast here, guys. My name is Nathan, and I am going to be your host today. This is our 10th episode, and officially this is episode 4 of season 2. So welcome to Double Digits, everybody. We're very thankful to have you guys. We're just going to start off with a big thank you to everyone who's listening so far. Anyone who gives me their time to listen into what we put in really helps, because basically every hour that goes into producing this podcast takes about another 3 to 4 behind the scenes to get everything moving. So that's production, audio work, writing, editing, and the actual recording time. Believe it or not, I do record these live, but a lot of it is written and rehearsed beforehand. So that way I actually have an idea of what's going on. So thank you everyone for your support so far. Every single view, like, comment, question, everything means so much to me, and it gives me a lot of drive to help out. If you guys don't know, this is also my dog Theo over here. Whoops, there we go. I'm looking in the mirror as we're going through. So he's just chilling. Finley is underneath. You guys can find me on YouTube at Finley and Theo Entertainment or the Healthy Humans Pod on YouTube. So 2 separate channels, but a lot of my names that I use online go because of my sweet boys, and I just love them so much. So again, just thank you guys so much for your continuing support. The best way to continue to support the podcast is leave us a like, watch these on Twitch, see them on YouTube, listen on either Anchor, Spotify, Pocket Cast, Google Podcasts, all those things. Most of you guys actually listening on Pocket Casts, and I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. We're working on getting this up on different platforms. For example, I'd love to get this up on Apple Podcasts as well, but that does cost a little bit of money, and we haven't quite hit our goals for that yet. So we won't be putting that up until we actually have the funds to do so. But that'll come in the future. We'll see. All right, guys, let's get into it. In this podcast, we cover a lot of different things. So we have covered topics in health, nutrition, fitness, and overall wellness. Episodes so far, our most watched episode is the Getting Started episode, because that's usually what people have the most amount of questions on, is they want to know, okay, how do I do this thing? How am I supposed to get to the point where I can actually get into the gym or get into a routine and actually see some progress? The next one's goal setting. So I think this one's very important, but it's gotten a lot less because that's more of the technical side of things. That is the actual process of saying, what can I get done realistically? We talk about a few different SMART goals and things like that. A lot of people set themselves really cool goals, some of them realistic, some of them not. So we talk about a little bit of that. We also have episodes on the benefits of lifting and cardio. Those are, again, very much just general overviews, but I really highly recommend taking a listen to those. Then we talk about diet culture, gym etiquette, HIIT training, which is high intensity interval training. And last week we talked about our first of the 6 fundamental movements, which is the squat. That means today we are going to be talking about lunges. This is the second fundamental movement here, guys, and this is probably one of the moves I have the biggest love-hate relationship with, and the reason is because this move is hard. It is not as stable as a squat, and so we're going to be kind of getting into what this is, and we're going to be talking just about a few different things. So we're going to be talking about how to perform a lunge, including multiple variations, common mistakes and limitations, and then how you progress the movement as well, because we want to make sure that you guys can always continue to get stronger, faster, better in every single movement you do. So that's going to be our plan for today. So we're going to be talking about the basics just to start here, guys. So the basics here is we're going to be talking about the lunge. In this diagram here, we're starting with a double dumbbell loaded lunge. Now, this is very symmetrical in the loading pattern, which is good. That's a great way to start, or even just doing a body weight lunge. You're going to see with that right leg is stepping forward. Both joints are hitting 90 degrees. There is a decent amount of ankle flexion and toe flexibility in this as well. But really the most important things is that the torso is staying upright. The knee and ankle are both roughly at 90 degrees, and same with the knee and ankle in that back leg as well. So that way you're hitting those happy joint angles, which we'll talk a little bit more about in the future as well. And again, I do find all of these images on simplyfitness.com. They have a lot of different resources and stuff, so you guys can go check them out if you're curious here. And the red just highlights what muscles are being worked as we're going through. This is a very quad dominant exercise, but truthfully, it does target the entire leg. It is quite the muscle burner, and we'll get into more of that here in a moment. One of my favorite things about the lunge is that it has a fantastic intersection between balance and strength. So last week we talked about the squat. This is a very well-balanced movement because your feet are symmetrical from each other. You're setting yourself a wide base of support, and you're loading the body in a way that is you're able to get the most amount of weight up and down as you're going through. The lunge is not quite that way. Because you're stepping one foot in front of the other, your base of support is more long and narrow rather than wide and short. So you're giving yourself less balance. You have a lot of lateral instability there. So when you are in that long lunge positioning, if you're experiencing any force from side to side, that involves a lot of balance to keep everything upright, especially if you're doing different loading styles, which we'll get into in a minute as well. Now, in that last picture, we did show just a forward lunge. That is just somebody taking a step forward, bringing the back knee down until it hits about 90 degrees. Same with the front leg, hitting about 90 degrees, driving back up. And now you can either do this in a walking stance where the back leg will then come up to the front leg, or you're driving off the front leg back to that standing position. Both are fine, but you can also do lunges to the side. We call those lateral lunges. And you can also do reverse lunges as well, where you're stepping back out of sight. And that is really, really good because it's going to go into that next part, which is proprioception. Now, if you're thinking, Nathan, I've never heard of proprioception before, that is okay. A lot of people have not. A proprioception is the idea that you know where your body is in space while your eyes are closed. So right now, if I'm going to raise my right hand up, I know that my right hand is slightly in front and to the right of my face because my nerves and my different proprioceptors are telling me that it is in this position in space. Now, we lose the ability to propriocept or to know where our body is in space over time. That is one of the effects of aging, and so this is a really, really good movement to continue practicing that proprioception, knowing where that body is in space, and being able to move through a loaded pattern. That's why the reverse lunges are one of my favorites, but you can also train these with the lateral and forward lunges as well. It really just depends on where your eyes are looking. If you're looking down at your feet the whole time, then you're going to get less of that benefit from that proprioception. If you are looking straight forward like you should be, eyes forward, eyes on the prize as you're going through, you are going to have a much better time. One of the next basics and benefits is that the lunges are very much a powerful exercise. When you get down into that position, you are stuck there unless you are able to provide the power that it takes to get out of that downward position. So it's really, really good for power development with that drive off. Again, either coming forward and bringing that back leg forward, or driving off and being able to counterate that weight of gravity and the load to bring yourself backwards into that standing position again. Keep in mind here, guys, this does have a lot of eccentric action. If you don't know what eccentric action is, that is the idea that the muscle lengthens through its movement phase, and this creates a lot of muscle tearing. So if you're somebody who struggles with DOMS, which is delayed onset muscle soreness, so for example, if you get really, really sore every single time you guys work out, a good plan for this is to reduce eccentric action. So maybe like lunges might not be something you want to start off with. That's totally fine, but it is something you want to be able to work up to. It is one of the 3 ways we actually interact with the ground. It's a way of getting our body close to the ground in an offset position so that we can develop that balance and really focus on developing strength in a compromised position. But keep in mind, it does have that DOMS risk. Next thing we're going to be looking at, we're doing our joint check here, guys, as my cursor freaks out on the side of the screen there just a little bit. That's always, this is always a fun one. Keep in mind that when you are going through, we're going to be looking at the entire body here. So we want to make sure that as we're going through, we're starting in a nice, straight, and upright position. We don't want to be slouching forward while we're starting this lunge here, guys. That's no good. I always tell people, like, you can't necessarily see it here, but if I were to turn this guy around, I would usually tell him, like, when you're in that standing position, pull the shoulder blades together, because that's going to pull the shoulder blades back. And a lot of times, especially me, I end up playing a lot of video games, and so I end up sitting with my shoulders hunched forward here. You want to really bring those shoulders back, because that's going to load that upper body a lot better. Let's start at the ground and work our way up here, guys. I know I'm kind of going a little bit out of order there with my normal normal routine, but keep in mind, we're going to always start with the ankles. Now, it does take a decent amount of ankle flexibility and stability here. If you have weak ankles, especially if your ankles tend to roll in or to roll out, we call that inversion and eversion. We want to make sure that you actually have the stability to do this first. So a lot of times, if I am programming a lunge for my clients, I will have them do a bodyweight lunge with like a box or something nearby, so that if they need to brace on something, they can always make sure that they're not putting themselves into a compromised position. So that's really what we're looking for. So if you are somebody that like knows, hey, I struggle with ankle stability, please make sure that you are really focusing on doing this correctly. Not rushing these movements, not just being like, oh, well, I want to do these and then hurting yourself. Then we get into the knee position. We kind of already talked about like that 90-degree rule. So if you're looking at the stage 2 of this movement, when we're in the bottom phase, you're going to see here at the hip, 90 degrees. Here at the knee, 90 degrees. Here at the ankle, 90 degrees. Same thing with that opposite leg. Knees, ankles, all at 90. Very, very important. Got to keep those joints stacked, essentially. So that way that knee is directly over the ankle. Same thing as you're going through. That keeps the body nice and strong, and it's going to make sure that those joints don't move too far out of place. Next, we're going to be talking about really focusing on hip and kind of torso position. So this is not a hinge, so we should not be angling forward. So what that would look like is if this person was angled forward, their torso would probably be coming out here at an angle instead of actually straight up and down. So keep in mind that if the back is not strong enough to hold a weight and go through this motion in an upright fashion, then it's definitely a good idea to start at a body weight lunge, or do other versions of modified lunges as well. So really, really good. And again, chest proud is usually a cue I will give. If I tell somebody to squeeze their shoulder blades together, sometimes that doesn't necessarily click. That doesn't always make sense. But if I tell somebody to like keep their chest proud and like kind of like puff up your chest a little bit, that very easily is going to get to the point where people are like, oh yeah, I'm going to pull my shoulder blades back. So using different cues, but basically for the same outcome, is actually really important as a trainer, because not everyone understands or has the body awareness to get to the point where they feel like they know everything that you're trying to say. So just keep that in mind here, guys. Everyone responds to slightly different cues. So that's a little important thing to know as well. Let me see. Shoulders, we already talked about that. Elbows, you shouldn't really be doing anything with your elbows here. Like you're just going to see in this position, the elbows are hanging. Now that will change based on how you are loading the body, but again, we could spend a lot of different time on each of these joints and in all of their different loading positions, but we do have a time limit to keep. The next thing we're going to be talking about here, guys, is just adding a little bit of load. When we are adding load here, guys, there's a lot of different ways to go through this. So you can add the load via a goblet, which is also referred to as a kettlebell. That is just a kettlebell held up at the chest. Really, really good to do. You can do a barbell. That's fantastic. You can do a barbell in a front loaded position or a back loaded position. Single side loading is one of my favorites because if somebody struggles with that lateral instability, loading only one side is going to highlight that. So it's going to make it more of a training focus. Really, really in favor of that. So that's really good. And anytime you do a single side load, you are also training the core as well. That's going to be very, very important. Then there's the single side high load. So for example, in our previous picture, if we were to back up here, a single side load would basically just be like a dumbbell only in one hand and the other hand is empty. A single side high load would mean this dumbbell, instead of resting down here by the hip, would actually be resting up at the shoulder, creating a higher center of gravity and more core control needed as well. You can also do this with bands. You can do this holding onto a band that's connected either to the side, to the front, back, whatever you want. Really just whatever direction you want to be training, you can add that little bit of band, and you can also do this with a landmine bar as well. If you're not familiar with what a landmine bar is, it is a barbell that is connected to the ground via just a really simple like pivot joint, and you can load the body in a slightly different way as well. Now, I do want to go over some other things before we hop into adding balance challenges here, guys. So one thing I do want to talk about is common mistakes and limitations. So if we go back to that slide here, guys, So let's just look at our main guy right here. So a lot of times what happens is when people are going through this movement, they will not step out far enough, or they will step out too far. Now, if the distance from this leg, from the back foot to the front foot, is too wide, then the back leg is going to have to hinge forward quite a bit more. There's going to be a greater level of extension in that leg, and that can just put us again in not quite the most optimum position. Then we get on the other side of that as well. Range of motion too small. If somebody's feet are really, really close together and they're trying to like go up and down, that actually puts a lot of pressure on the hips and the knees, and it's very uncomfortable to do. A lot of times when I see people loading, they'll also have a decent amount of twisting. So again, if the core is not engaged properly, then what happens is the body is going to twist. It is going to show those imbalances by the hips and the shoulders kind of moving back and forth a little bit. So if we're looking at that hip girdle, we want it to basically be moving forward and moving back, with the legs doing their work, going through those 90-degree angles. But if the hips are twisting while you're stepping forward, then that's going to lead to some other issues as well. So we really want to focus on reducing that hip and torso twist. A lot of times where the hips go, the torso goes as well. The next thing is just a rounded back. If somebody just doesn't have the strength to hold themselves up in an upright position, we're going to train that. We might use like a PVC pipe behind the back as their first version of load, because a lot of times getting that back into that position and just performing a lunge, even though it's basically a bodyweight lunge, is an incredibly difficult version of a lunge to do. And so it can be a really, really good training tool to do, or even a warm-up tool as well. So if you are somebody that struggles with like kind of rounding those shoulders forward as you're going through, you can hold a PVC pipe, usually one hand behind the neck, opposite hand behind the low back. And if you have those 3 points of contact with that pipe, which is contact with the head, the shoulders, and the hip, again, we're usually talking about a 4-foot PVC pipe here. You're not necessarily adding load, but if that spine is not used to holding up that body while you go through a range of motion, that can be an incredibly difficult task, and actually a really, really good exercise option. So I highly recommend that if you do struggle with keeping your back straight, or oftentimes we'll refer to it as actually a neutral spine. Another few things that I'll do if somebody does have limitations, or if they do have some imbalances we're working through, a lot of time I will focus on like either reducing the range of motion, and that's not range of motion for how far out you're stepping your foot, that's how far down the knee is descending before coming back up, because you are still going to get that eccentric and concentric action of those quads and those hamstrings. I'll still focus on that, but if somebody doesn't have the strength to get themselves all the way back up, then it can be fairly fruitless to make them get all the way down to the ground, and then they're like, okay, I'm stuck, I can't do another rep because now I have to like get myself into another position, which usually isn't super efficient. Again, this usually happens in fairly deconditioned individuals, usually when they're starting an exercise program, and that's okay. Totally okay to be bad at something when you start. It's okay to be bad at something for a long time. The whole goal of exercise is to make progress, not to be perfect. Progress is what we're looking for always. Kind of side tangent here. We really, here at Healthy Humans, we do promote health at all sizes. I understand that like people are born with different inherent skills. Not everyone's born to do the same task. Not everyone's going to look the same. Not everyone's at the same point in life. But that doesn't mean you're incapable of being healthy, making healthy choices, and making progress towards your health goals. I've seen people who are slightly overweight who are actually much healthier than people who are what we would consider to be skinny. You know, their blood work and everything might look fantastic. They might just have a little bit extra weight. That's okay. You know, my whole goal here is that anyone and everyone can come to this, find information they find useful, and get to the point where they're like, okay, I'm getting motivated to kind of take control of my own health. Keep in mind here, guys, we use these graphics because they're PNGs. They're really easy to put into these graphics. But this guy's like got an 8-pack going, like every muscle is defined. That's mostly for educational purposes. This is not what almost anyone is going to look like, nor do I expect people to look like this. So just keep that in mind. I want to make sure that you guys know that anyone is welcome here. Another option you can do is you can put yourself into a brace position as well. So kind of getting back on track here. A brace just means that you have something next to you, whether or not that's a box, a wall, a railing, a squat rack, something that like when you get down into your range of motion, you can either grab onto and like push off to help assist yourself on the way up. This is also commonly done with TRX bands as well. So those are just suspension straps that you can put onto pretty much anything. really, really good for developing strength. If somebody's not able to get to that 90 degrees without a brace, oftentimes we'll give them a brace position so that they can get that range of motion and they can practice getting to that 90 and back up. It builds a great amount of confidence in that person going through that movement, and then they're going to build that strength a lot quicker. And then this is also a really, really good practice for weight shifting as well. I find often in my clients who are usually above like 55, 60, weight shifting becomes hard the older you get. That's just one of those skills that does unfortunately go out the window if not consistently used and practiced. So if you're thinking, oh, well, I'm not in my 60s right now, I'm in my 20s or I'm in my 30s, you need to start practicing it now, because weirdest thing, you're going to get into your 30s and your 40s and you're going to realize, oh crap, I suck at stuff. If you don't use it, you lose it. But if you use these muscles and these movement patterns now, you hold on to them for decades to come. I want you guys to be the healthiest generation of 60 and 70-year-olds we've seen. So let's keep on moving on here, guys. We've talked enough about the mistakes and limitations and different things you can do to kind of help give you an option for that as well. And next, we're going to talk about adding balance challenges. Now, we talked about the lunge being a great intersection of strength and balance. And so there's different ways that you can challenge this as well. So you can use things like offset surfaces. So lunging onto a surface that is either higher or lower than your starting position. You can also add stable and unstable. So for example, if you're lunging onto a box that is not moving, that is what we would call a stable offset surface. If you're lunging onto like not a yoga ball, but a Bosu ball, so like one of those half domes, that is a offset unstable surface, because when you're landing, it has the ability to kind of move that foot around. Really, really good. Now, you can also do this with level surfaces as well. So this would be, for example, using like an exercise mat or two different Bosu balls. Both legs are at the same level, so there's no height difference, but both feet are on an unstable surface. So very similar, but you can give those challenges on offset and level surfaces, and you can also do reactionary callouts as well. This is one of my favorite things to do with my athlete clients, is building up their reaction time and their strength and their balance all at the same time. So I usually have them start in a standing position and I will give them a time call out. So usually a 1 through 12 number, and then I will have them lunge into that direction. Be able to lunge, set the foot out, and then come back. And this is often with body weight just to start, or if they're doing really well, we'll add weight to that as well. But the idea is to go through and kind of set a good tempo, but also they don't know what direction is coming. So if I call a 12 o'clock and we're just using the right foot, so if the right foot is the mover for this, if I say 12 o'clock, they're going to lunge straight forward. If I call a 3 o'clock, they're going to lunge over to the side. If I, or actually a 3 o'clock with the right leg would actually be a curtsy lunge. If I said 9 o'clock, then they would have to lunge over to the side, all those different things. Or even just going from 12 to 6 or 12 to 5. You know, they're going to go from a forward lunge to a reverse lunge, but at a slight angle. And so it really helps train that multi-directionality of that movement, which is really, really good. The next thing you can do is you can also add isometrics as well. If you don't know what an isometric is, that is okay. Part of this podcast is you guys are hopefully going to learn a little bit of the language that we use in exercise terminology, because it's really good for you. And I say that not to just be mean, but really because one of my purposes with educating you guys is that you guys can advocate for yourself. I find that clients who are more knowledgeable about what parts of their body are called, especially like with specific anatomical terms, and with what the body does, especially when something goes wrong, if they're able to tell their doctor, like, oh, my arm hurts. Okay, well, which part of your arm? If you're like, hey, my elbow hurts when I'm doing this, and then describe what type of pain, that kind of, be as specific as possible. That's going to take the 20 questions that your physician has to do, and it's going to shrink them down quite a bit. So it's going to expedite your service of care, essentially. So really, really important to kind of know this. So for example, if you were like, hey, when I'm holding a position, so when I'm isometrically working like my bicep, it hurts. Or if I'm going through a lunge and I'm holding it, it hurts. Good things to know. Just so that it can improve your vocabulary, and it's really, really going to help you guys out. But our first isometric is just a static lunge here, guys. That's basically just getting into that lunge position and then elevating the knees up and down. So instead of like stepping all the way out and then stepping back, you're stepping out into your position first. So the feet are going to be both in place, and then you're basically just bringing the knee up and the knee down again. And there's no foot coming back in place. This is also called a split squat. Really, really good. You can also add movement to this as well. So if you're interested in doing like a lunge and then holding the position, hovering that knee above the ground for a few seconds, that's going to create a tremendous amount of time under tension on that muscle. It's going to be tough and it might make you sore afterwards, but it's a really, really great way to build muscle strength and hypertrophy. But it can be really good for you. Just do it with body weight first, move up in weight as you're going through, because trust me, a 3-second hold is not as easy as it sounds. And then you can also add upper body movements as well. So keep in mind, if we pop back to our friendly neighborhood PNG man over here, if you're lunging into this point, if we're holding that lunge, especially with that knee right over the ground here, so there's that little bit of space right where my cursor is at. For example, you can add a bicep curl into a shoulder press from this position. So while this person lunges out with their right leg, they have to curl the weight up to the shoulder and then press up to the sky. That is a great way to challenge the core, challenge the legs, because they're the ones that have to support from this very, very tough position. And now you're getting an upper body workout as well. That's a great thing to do. And I do this a lot in like my HIIT workouts. Very, very tough, but adding upper body movements can be very, very good. All right, next thing is we're going to be talking about adding power. This is a must for athletes. If you're an athlete and you can't develop muscular power, which is the ability to move through space or move a weight quickly, you might not be a great athlete. And that's okay. Not all of us are great athletes, but if I am training athletes, they need to be focusing on power. So if we're doing lunges, there's a good chance we might do jump lunges, where instead of adding weight, we're going to add speed into the equation instead. So we might take that step out, and then from that position, instead of just stepping out and then stepping back, we might step out and then do a quick jump and switch spots with those feet and then jump back. Very, very tough, because you have to generate enough upwards force to give your legs enough time to switch places in that position. Or I might add an upper body workout like a lateral ball slam. I might have somebody lunge down, and then I might have them slam a ball to the side. Catch that, lunge down with the other side, slam it to the other side. So that way we're working a little bit on like hip rotation under control. That's the big key there. Hip control, but with power as well. And it's going to be important for accuracy, because if you do a ball slam in a lunge position and you totally miss that throw, you might have to like go run off and grab that ball. So, but those are just a few ideas on how we might add power into the workout and really make sure that you guys are getting the most out of your workouts, especially your lunges. A lot of times, again, this is a love-hate relationship. These moves are hard, and they get hard very, very quick. So if you're like, oh, bodyweight lunge isn't that hard, we'll start adding some weight, and it's going to get very, very sore very, very quickly. So I highly recommend you guys adding this movement into your workouts. Really, really good for you. Next, we're going to go into a workout update. So looks like I definitely needed to edit this here really quick. So you guys are going to see something really fast. There we go. And this is the nice thing about YouTube, is I can just edit this out later. There we go. I meant to update that, but I did not get my measurements in time, so that's okay. All right, guys, we're going to go over my personal workout update as well. Now, I include these for you guys because a lot of times people ask me, what do you do for your workouts? And I do a lot of different things. It really depends on how my body is feeling. At the beginning of September, I got into some more running, and the shoes that I'm wearing have about 300 to 400 miles into them, so they don't absorb a lot of impact anymore. And so what that led to was a decent amount of knee pain, which I was doing a lot of stretching and doing some different therapeutic exercises, and it actually felt like it was under control. Then my hip started hurting. That was a bummer, because that one was much more like, this is not a muscle issue, this is a joint issue. My joints literally are hurting because of all the impact. When you're running, you're putting about 8 times the amount of body weight force into the knees and the hips. So for me, that's too much. So that was a lot of force. So I'm actually going to be returning to running once I get my new shoes. I have some Hokas coming in the mail. Very, very excited about that because I haven't had Hokas in a while, but I'm kind of transitioning back to them because they have been one of my favorite pair of shoes. But I'm going to hopefully be doing a product review for you guys as well. So if you are somebody who is like, hey, I don't know what kind of shoes I should wear. Your shoes mostly depend on what activity you're doing. But if I'm doing, 15 to 20,000 steps a day during my day job and my workout, I need to have a shoe that's going to support me. So that's going to be really, really good. In my workouts throughout September, I got about 2,630 MEPs, which is just my MyZone effort points. If you guys don't know yet, I wear a heart rate monitor. That is the MyZone brand. It's a really, really strong heart rate monitor. It has been absolutely fantastic so far. I couldn't recommend them enough. I got about 2,630 points during the month of September. My goal is to get about 3,000 in the month of October, so that's roughly about 100 points a day. I'm actually already on track for that, which is fantastic. 100 points a day. It's pretty easy to do, so if you guys aren't familiar, we had a few of those graphs up in our last videos, so different zones just correspond to different points. So if you're in your white zone, which is the lower zone that's basically under 50% of your max heart rate, then you're not earning any points and you're not really earning any calories. That's your resting zone. If you're in that zone, you're not actually exercising. So that's good to know, which is a good thing and a bad thing, depending on what workouts you're doing. Then it goes up to your gray zone. Your gray zone is like 50 to 60% or 50 to 59%, excuse me. And you earn 1 point per minute in the gray zone. Then it goes blue, green, and then yellow/red. Yellow and red earn the same amount of points in each zone. But that's just the switch from 80% to 90% from yellow to red, respectively. So when you're in the blue zone, you earn 2 points per minute. When you're in the green zone, 3 points per minute. Yellow and above, 4 points per minute. So if you are looking to get 100 points per day in this method, you need 100 minutes in gray, or 50 minutes in blue, or 33 minutes or 34 to round out that decimal in green, or just 25 minutes in that yellow. If you go back a few episodes here, guys, we talked about HIIT training. So when you guys are looking to get higher amounts of exercise, they're worth more because you're getting that heart rate up so much higher. And so that's actually fairly easy to do. Although I did bench yesterday. And so because bench press is a lying down exercise, you're actually not getting your heart rate up that high because you're laying down while you do it. Yes, it's a lot of muscle strain, but the heart itself doesn't actually have to work that hard, which is kind of a bummer, but that's okay. So that's kind of what I'm doing this month here, guys, and I'll be keeping you up on some other goals and stuff that I have set. I try to set weekly goals for myself so that I can kind of share those with you guys. And if you guys are looking for any like workout programs, I do have those available on my Patreon as well. So if you are interested in getting those resources, I actually have quite a few on there with different tables, and they have sets, reps, rest schemes, all those different things. And I make as many of those as you guys need. So, and I try to put up a few of those each week. So if you guys are interested in that, support the page by becoming a patron. I think it's like as little as $5 a month or something like that. And for the exercise library that you guys are going to get is going to be fantastic. All right, now we're going to get into viewer questions. I get this one quite a bit, and I get stopped at the gym a lot. And people ask me this. They ask me, should I use the core machines at the gym? A lot of times people ask this as a caveat for, I want a six-pack. Which of the machines is going to help me get a six-pack? So I'll get variations of the question, but they're all basically the same thing. The answer is always no. Absolutely not. If you are using a machine, the problem is that like machines that are on cables and tracks at a gym are good for isolation, strength building, and a little bit of power training if you're doing them correctly. But again, it's all isolation. The body's not working as a complete unit. So for me, I will usually recommend those being at the end of your workout after you've already done power training, balance training, strength training, and conditioning. You've already checked all your boxes, but you want to specifically improve the muscle strength of isolated muscle groups. That's when I recommend these. I do say that does come with a little bit of an asterisk because I don't want people using the core machine. So that machine where you're just like crunching together or extending the back, that's called the back extension, or the rotary torso where you're twisting under load. I don't want you guys using any of those. And the reason is because that is training the spine to move in a direction that it's not supposed to move. The spine is meant for stability, not mobility. So that's how I usually want it to train. Now, the upper spine, the T-spine, your thoracic spine, is meant for a little bit more mobility. Like, we need to be able to move a little bit. If it wasn't meant to move at all, we'd be stuck around and we'd have to like shift around quite a bit, and we'd feel like we're in an old video game. But overall, these usually put a lot of load on like the low back and the lumbar spine. That's no good. We don't want to teach those muscles and those vertebrae to move around. We want to teach them to be steady. We want to teach them to stay in place and support our body, so that over time, we're not teaching those discs and vertebrae to move out of alignment. And so that's what I would say to that one. Coming up next, what is the best way to lose weight on vacation? This is always an interesting one. And again, this comes in various different forms. So what's the best way to lose weight on vacation? What kind of workouts should I do while I'm on vacation? What kind of foods should I eat? A lot of times people ask me to life coach them instead of personal train them. And what that means is people just want to be told what to eat, how much to eat, and that's it. They just want to essentially take that choice away. They want me to take that choice away from them so that they can get healthier. That is not my job, and that is not sustainable over the long run. And I'll go into why that is here right now. People are independent. They need to be able to make their own choices. Whether or not those are good choices or bad choices, doesn't matter. They need to be able to make their own choices. Now, when it comes to staying healthy on vacations, there's kind of two different viewpoints for this. When you're on vacation, you're going to feel like you are missing out if you are not exploring the towns, or like having a drink, or like, you know, going out to eat and eating new things and trying new cuisines. You're going to feel like you miss out quite a bit. And that can actually cause a decent amount of stress. And stress is the worst thing you can do for yourself when you are trying to lose weight. So it's not actually that beneficial to try to stick with a like really rigid diet plan, unless it's like a diet that's like a medical intervention. That's a different story. But if you're just like trying to lose weight a little bit, I usually tell people like it's not really worth torturing yourself with like these usually extreme diets that people are on while you're on vacation. I usually tell people like, enjoy yourself, spend the time with your family. It's more important that you minimize stress and like help the body recover, because it's only going to take you a few workouts to kind of get back to that baseline that you were before vacation, unless you're like binging, eating and drinking like the whole time, which again, I wouldn't recommend. But like going out to eat isn't going to kill you as you're going through, unless you're eating, you know, seafood and you're allergic. Anyway, bad joke. Anyway, what I'm trying to say here is that a lot of the times the stress-induced dieting on vacation usually isn't going to make it worth it. You're not going to have those happy memories of vacation. You're going to remember, oh, I remember that one time we went to like Disneyland and I didn't eat anything and I was miserable the whole time. Whereas my family is over here like snacking on treats and getting good drinks and all this stuff. And you're just going to remember the fact that you were probably miserable the whole time. So I do tell people it is important to like use what I call the 80-20 rule. So 80% of the time you're following a routine that is moving you into positive directions. So that means like eating good food, healthy food, exercising regularly, drinking lots of water, those type of things. And then 20% of the time is like, okay, I want to go out on a date with my wife, so we're going to go get some tasty food. Or, hey, a buddy asked me out for drinks, and we're going to go get, he asked me out. No, it's like, hey, a buddy wants to go get a drink. Yeah, let's do that. If I'm doing that every single night, it's going to cause health problems. But if it's once every once a week, or maybe a little bit more often, maybe once every 2 weeks, not going to break the bank. It's actually not going to make that much of a difference. So that's the nuance there. And I get asked this a lot because we are moving into the rainy season in Washington. And I say moving into the rainy season as it should be raining, and it's there's moisture outside in the fog, but there's not actually that much rain, which is concerning in its own right. But a lot of people are snowbirds here. A lot of my clients that have that do personal training, a lot of times they're like, hey, we're moving out of state for like 2 months and then we'll be back, or whatever. Sometimes it's even longer. And they're like, oh, we're going to be on an extended vacation, or whatever it might be. Now, again, I know that's like very unrealistic for a lot of us, but quite a few people like to snowbird down in like Arizona and stuff from here, because it gets fairly depressing up here in the Pacific Northwest in the winter months. But a lot of them just like totally fall off the wagon during that time. So I get this question quite a bit. Hopefully that was not a too long-winded answer for what's going on here, guys. So I do want to say here, guys, thank you so much for watching. Again, if you guys enjoyed the podcast and would like to join in on the discussion, please consider joining us on Patreon. There are multiple benefits with tiered levels to each, and the VIP level does get you access to myself for exercise adherence training, program design, and all those fun things. Exercise prescription is a lot of times what I will call it. So what I'm prescribing for you as far as exercise, nutritional advice, and that actual accountability that people need. Again, if that VIP price is not your speed, you guys can join at the first or second tier for access to our Discord server, where you can chat with us in real time. You can get access to all of those workout plans that we already have on there, and you can ask questions for the podcast, and those questions are going to get priority, so we really help that out as well. Keep in mind here, guys, that is tough for some people to do. So if you're like, hey, I don't have money to throw down on Discord, or onto Patreon, that's okay. The best way to support this podcast is to like the episode, listen, tune into live streams that's happening right now on Twitch. Yay, we have all of our logos and stuff over here. So Twitch is where we are streaming right now. The live version, or the slightly edited version of this, is going to go up on YouTube, and then you can find our podcast at Google Podcast, Anchor, Spotify, and Pocket Casts as well. Looks like I'll have to add that to our outro screen. Totally fine. And you can find the Healthy Humans podcast on YouTube. You can also find us. You can find different updates and things from me, which is going to be Finley the dog, on Twitter and Instagram as well. So you guys are going to see me in a couple of different places, but that's because I do mostly make content for gamers and people who like to do nerdy things. So I really highly recommend you guys check out those resources, because gamers deserve to be healthy too. And we love all you guys. I'm going to make sure you guys are having fun, action-packed lives as you guys are going through. So we do have a couple of goals for this podcast. We would love to hit our first patron milestone, which is just 5 patrons. Again, that would really just give us a little bit of just financial support to kind of go through and actually have the money to make some improvements on here. A lot of times, like, we're working full-time in other jobs, and then we're doing this on the side. So really, this just costs me money. So we'd really just love to offset some of those costs. But really, we would love to also get 50 listeners as well. We have a lot of listeners all over, which we're going to get into in just a moment, which I'm really excited about. But yeah, just make sure you guys, if you guys are just listening, that's one of the best things you can do. Listening, liking, sharing, commenting your questions, joining in on the discussion. If you see something on Twitter or Instagram or YouTube or Twitch even, like, leave a comment, leave a follow, whatever it is, it all helps, and it all goes towards the same cause, essentially. All right, next episode, we're going to be talking about our next fundamental movement pattern, which I believe is going to be hinges. That is our third and final way that we interact with the ground, and it's one of my favorites. So we're very excited about that. If you guys do have any questions, you guys can always just DM me on Twitter or Instagram. And you can also use the hashtag HealthyHumansPod, or send it to my email, which is healthyhumanspodcast@gmail.com. You guys can find me throughout the week at Finley the Dog Gaming on Patreon, Instagram, and Twitch, and Finley the Dog 736 on Twitter. On YouTube, we are at Finley and Theo Entertainment for more of our gaming resources, and we are at Healthy Humans Pod on the actual edited version of these episodes as well. So consider going through those, liking those, all that fun stuff that we already mentioned. Now, for our last checkpoint, we do have listeners throughout the US and internationally as well, but we did get a few new listeners. So previously, we had listeners in Washington, Ohio, California, Texas, Oklahoma, and Indiana. Very excited to have all you guys back, and hope you guys continue listening. We had listeners in the UK, so over in Europe as well, which included the UK, Sweden, Belgium, Spain, and more internationally in Australia as well. That was a terrible accent. I'm so sorry. Now I've lost all my Australian viewers, but that's okay. I love you guys. I'm so sorry. But we do have several new locations that are listening in as well. So here in the US, we have 3 new states that are joining the ranks. You guys can find us over in, there we go. So we've got listeners in Florida, North Carolina, and New Jersey. Keep in mind, this is a very large map, so eventually the US, if we hit all 50 states, this is just going to be a mass of different pins as we go through, especially with like some of the smaller European states as well. But you guys can see we did also add the Czech Republic, and we did add India as well. So thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for listening. We really appreciate you guys tuning in, listening. We hope you guys are listening to more and more of these. Again, the more you guys listen, the better. please share this around. The more support we get from you guys, the more resources we can come out with. Now, to finish up here, guys, remember you guys are drinking enough water throughout the day. Make sure you guys are moving, exercising, getting that sweat going, and most importantly, have a fantastic rest of your day. We will see you guys next week at 9:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on Twitch. Hope to see you guys around and hear what you guys have to say and all of your questions until next week as well. Until then, we will see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.